Hey, welcome back to Bridal Sewing Techniques, and today we're going to talk about how to bustle an illusion train. Multiple layers, multiple lengths. Are you someone who has experience with a mix of sewing but is looking to get into the bridal niche? This channel is for you. Hey, this beautiful train is on trend right now. We've got that long illusion layer on top with the lace and the tulle, and then the under layers are different lengths. They are often even cut completely differently from one another, and so they're not quite as stackable as the trains that we're used to seeing. So the problem that this presents is if you were to bustle it, say a single traditional American bustle, and you were to bustle it to where that solid satin layer underneath was floor length, you would have a lot of extra tulle and lace left on the ground. Now let's say you take the opposite approach and you pull it up a little higher so that the tulle and lace is even with the ground in the back or just a little on the ground, and look at what happens. That looks ridiculous. Your solid layer is way high up. You can see your legs and heels. That's not what we're going for. So here's an example, and this is the dress that I used for this video, but you can see it's got a little sweep train underneath. It's a solid layer of polyester fabric. A lot of times you'll find that they're satins or something like that. Now there are some stabilizing tacks on this train already. You can see that somebody has gone through and chain tacked this train in several places. That's very important for keeping the train layer stabilized so that that solid layer stays stretched out and looking beautiful and out from underneath the bride's feet. So what we can't do though always is keep those stabilizing tacks in there and then bustle the gown. Sometimes things get a little hung up when you do that. If that's the case, what you need to do is you need to remove the stabilizing tacks and replace them with a set of snaps. So here I am stretching out all the layers, aligning the center back seam of all the layers, and I'm just going to put a pin in here. I'm going to do this in the center back, and I'm also going to kind of do it on the quarter parts of the side, kind of quarter of the way around. The side seams usually have the stabilizing tacks as well. You usually don't have to disturb them for doing the bustle. So here I am putting the marking where the snaps will be on the right side, making sure everything is aligned. Ideally, you're going to do this on a seam. There's not always a seam. Sometimes you just have to make it happen. And you know, ideally to save time, you would only have 3 sets of snaps here to do. But sometimes you have to put in 5. But see how now if the bridesmaid were to grab the train and fluff the train, how it lays out so beautifully. We really need to preserve that functionality. These are the snaps that I use, jumbo nylon snaps, and I should have them linked to down below. I also keep a lot of these things linked to on the products page of my website, which is bridalsewingtechniques.com. Here's my favorite sharp, a size 1 sharp from Richard Hemming & Sons, or Richard Hemming & Son. I love this needle. It's super long and strong, and it just goes through all the fabric layers beautifully for doing a bustle. And of course, you're going to want to grab some of that hypo cement. Now I'm going to run both ends of the thread through the eye of the needle so that my thread thickness is quadrupled. Here I am tying the knot. I do have a video on how to tie a knot using this method. It's very fast and reliable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around these pins that I marked, and I'm going to put a set of snaps on. I know some seamstresses may get all up in arms about this, but I'm not going to sew the snap so surely down that I sew it on all 4 holes on each half of the set of snaps, and so you're stitching it down in 8 places and it's super anchored together. I have found if you do that, you're really killing the fluffy, ethereal look of the train. So I literally only tack it in one of those holes that are with the snaps for both halves. So you can see the distance I'm giving that snap between the layers. That way it does still flow more naturally like the original train tack that they had. Now I'm going to show you how we would put in the French bustle. Basically you just play with it. I'm going to tuck it up under there. I'm going to bustle this solid layer separately from the tulle layer, and I'm going to mark it with a pin. I'm just going to pick it up, and yes, that looks good. So I know we talked about in our books video, some people measure. You can really get into some science with this. I don't. I literally just pull it up different ways and pick the prettiest way. So here I am picking the traditional over bustle or American bustle. For this dress, I'm literally just going to pick it up somewhere and lift it up until that lace edge is about to the floor, just a pretty length there. I'm going to mark that with a pin, and I'm going to do that 3 times because as you can see, the back sides of the train are still a little long. So this dress is definitely calling for just a single French bustle underneath. That's a very low profile bustle. And then for your top layer, this dress is definitely calling for 3 bustles. This, of course, is also up to the taste of the bride. If she wants a demi bustle where the train is a little on the ground, you could always just do a single traditional on the outside. So here I've measured, made sure that everything is symmetrical. I'm not just going to go by eyeballing it, as they say, the way I pulled it up. I'm not just going to go by that, but I'm going to measure everything. This dress does work out to bustle on the seams. There's my 3 hooks. Basically, I take a very large hook. I'll link to those down below. Also, I paint them with a chalk paint, and I keep them in stock painted so that I can use them for my bustles. I prefer this to buttons personally because I don't think they break as easily. Yes, sometimes I do still use the buttons in my shop, but the hooks really have served me well. And after I get them sewn on, I can even touch them up real quick with a fine brush. Just another touch of chalk paint that will match more perfectly and take care of any of the paint that is chipped off or anything. So here I am sewing on this hook for the top layer, the traditional bustles, the 3. I'm going to do 3 sets of hooks and loops. So I'm going to sew these hooks in 3 places, the center back seam and then the other 2 seams. I put the hooks down lower on the skirt because they were less likely to be seen down there, and the higher part of the attachment I chose to do the loops up higher on the dress because they're very low profile and much more difficult to see. So basically with each dress you're going to want to configure the hooks and loops in the least distracting way. Here's the thread that I'm using, super strong upholstery thread, and like you saw, I'm cementing my knots. So at this point I've already sewn the 3 hooks on, and I'm getting ready to sew the loops. Now the recording didn't turn out as good as I would have liked for this segment, so I'm also going to overlay a little sketch to show you what I'm doing. Basically I'm going to do 2 loops, and my upholstery thread is already doubled, as you can tell. So I'm going to end up basically with 4 loops going across the top surface of this lace. If the train is heavy and the fabric is not strong enough, you will want to back your bustle with something, a little square of muslin, another piece of lace, maybe a clear button, whatever you think is going to be safe for the job. So now I'm going through and I'm wrapping those loops together. I'm just binding them together. There are a couple of different ways to make bustle loops. This is my personal favorite. You may do it a different way, and that's fine. For the other 2 loops, I'm going to show you the chain tack loops that I see very commonly. But this is what this kind of bustle loop looks like. The reason why I prefer this type of bustle loop is because to strengthen your loop, all you have to do is add another stitch before you lash them together. I do have a video on how to do the bustle stitch that goes into great detail, and it's recorded very closely. I will link to that down below if you want to practice along with that. But basically, when you're doing this chain tack bustle loop that I see very often, your bustle loop is only going to be as strong as the thread that's coming off of your needle. So if your thread is doubled, it doesn't matter how many chain tacks you put in there, your bustle loop is still only going to be as strong as that doubled thread. So that's why I was saying I prefer the original stitch that I showed you, but I wanted to show both in this video because I know some people have preferences and can get all up in arms if I don't show the way that they do it. I'm like, have mercy, seamster says. Have mercy on each other, okay? So, anyways, I'm showing this, and I also want to show you in the end another reason why I don't care for this kind of tack being a bustle loop, because they often slip. And I know we see that a lot when you see the tailor's tack at the top of a zipper on a new gown. You'll see that the crochet loop has slipped, and it's exposing the true strength of the thread. The thinness of it is just the thread that's coming off the needle. I hope that makes sense. But when I show you the picture of these loops after they've slipped, hopefully that will make more sense to you. So what I'm saying is, if your thread is doubled, your chain tacked bustle loop can only be as strong as a doubled thread. If you use that first type of bustle tack that I showed you, you can quadruple it if you want to, and that's how strong it is. Now what I'm showing you is the French bustle. I'm just moving the fabric around, and I'm showing you where the pins are and where we're going to end up putting these. I'm heat sealing the ends of some ribbons. These ribbons I've cut off about 8 inches long maybe. I've sped this up for you obviously because if you're visiting this channel, this is for an experienced seamster who's just getting in the bridal niche, so you know how to tack on a ribbon. So I'm speeding this up for you, but you can still see the process completely. So I'm just very thoroughly tacking this ribbon on, and I am using the hypo cement on my knot so my knot doesn't slip, and I triple knot all of these knots that you see in the video. Behind the bustle loops, everything, hooks, all of it's going to be triple knotted and cemented. Now I know there's other ways to do French bustles. Some people use fur hooks. Some people, use hooks and loops or buttons and crochet tack loops. There's all different ways, okay? That doesn't make anybody better than anybody else. This works fine. Whatever your favorite way of doing is fine. Now, I just tied that in a bow to be simple to untie for now, but you would instruct the bride to make sure it was double knotted on the wedding day and tied all the way down to the root. So right now I have that French bustle is hooked, and I am now hooking the traditional bustle. To hook these to hook this bustle together, obviously your first step is going to be unsnap the layers. So you have, I'm just going to go back over this real quick, and I'll go over it again. Repetition really helps us to learn, but basically you're going to have your layers are snapped together, and when you start to hook the bustle on the wedding day, you're going to unsnap them together, you're going to tie your French bustle, and then you're going to do your 3 hooks and loops for your traditional. Now here is the image of the slipped chain tack. See how it's only as strong as that right side. This is strong enough. I don't doubt this at all for this dress because this is just lace. The lace is thick, but it's not heavy. And then there is my personal favorite type of loop. It's nice and tight together, and it's 4 threads thick instead of the 2 threads thick. So again, do what works for you. So I'm going to show you some sketches. Here is the dress to begin with the multiple train lengths. We call this an illusion train. Step 1, sew 3 sets of snaps to stabilize the train layers. Step 2, French bustle, the smaller underlayer train. It's usually a solid fabric. And then step 3, bustle, the top tulle illusion layer. This is often 3 traditional American bustles, but will vary. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 5 or 7. It's just going to depend on how the bride needs it to function and what looks best for that design. Now here's a little extra thing I wanted to throw in for you. For those of you who are not familiar with French bustles, I took a wedding gown that we put 3 French bustles in. It's pink to pink, yellow to yellow, platinum to platinum. And I turned it wrong side out so you could see where those bustles were, and you can see how you would just tie them together very securely to form your French bustle. And here's the final look of this fully bustled illusion train gown. Any comments or questions, please leave them down below. Thank you so much for visiting my channel again. Please hit like, the thumbs up button. It helps so much. Share, subscribe, and hit that bell. Have a great day.